Top 5 questions facing eliminated Big 12 teams. I left Texas out of this because the question they would have is, what's the SEC like? That's the question. They're not a Big 12 team. Now that they're not playing anymore, the basketball, like every time the season ends for Texas, that team is no longer in the Big 12. So football's not in the Big 12. Men's basketball is not in the Big 12. As soon as baseball's over, they won't be in the Big 12 anymore. And so on and so on and so on. But top 5 facing the eliminated Big 12 teams. Number 5, BYU. Can you add an element to your game? Because they won games this year pretty much one way. Bombing the hell out of threes. If they can find a second element to that, and I think they'll keep their roster mostly in check. I mean, as much as you can in today's world, but can you add an element to your game to take it to the next level? Because things are about to get harder because 2 tournament teams, Arizona and Colorado, are coming in. So you're going to have to find new wrinkles in things. And BYU is impressive. You're one of the Big 12. Can you add something to take you to the next spot?
Yeah, they were pretty feast or famine.
Yeah.
When they were on, they were one of the more fun and unique teams to watch in the country. And when they were not on, they were way off. I mean, it was famine. They were very much a feast or famine team, and you can't really live by that unless you got Steph Curry littering your roster or guys like that. They were very one-dimensional in that regard, and that does need to become a little less one-dimensional.
Absolutely. Number 4, TCU. Can you hold on to Jamie Dixon? I think they will through this cycle. It looks like maybe they've come through the storm. But there's always a lot of talk around him and somebody coming and getting him. Now, there's no reason for him to leave TCU, but if someone came along, I thought maybe, Louisville might get in the mix on Jamie Dixon. I don't think he's a big enough name. And look, the names they're getting right now are probably not, as big as Jamie Dixon in certain regard. But if you can hold on to Jamie Dixon for another couple years, I think TCU can really start to make some inroads. They seem to kind of, it feels like a plateau. I don't think it is. I think that eventually they're gonna pop through and do something kind of similar to what Tech did a couple years ago, where all of a sudden they're really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, they've built up quite the program under him, and I think he's a really great coach. Obviously, a very short stay in the NCAA tournament, but he's a great coach, and I'd imagine there's going to be some folks who have been giving him a phone call or are going to be giving him phone calls. And so, the longer they can hold on to him, the more you can build that program up and hopefully take it to places it hadn't been in a long time or ever.
Yeah, he does a good job. Recruits well.
Yeah.
Now, who's the guy that was a really good player that he got a disagreement with? He's on. He's. I don't know if he's still in the tournament or not.
Eddie Lampkin?
Eddie Lampkin.
Yeah. Now, TCU can't afford to lose Eddie Lampkin. Now, whatever the reasons were, you got to make sure those relationships stay good. That happens. It's going to happen even.
He's not because he's at Colorado.
Yeah. You can't. When you have him, you cannot lose him unless it's to the point where you can't put up with him. But you got to figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah. Number 3, Texas Tech. What do they need to take the next step? You watch games this year, and sometimes they looked, when they were fully healthy, like a complete team. They played good defense, they played good offense, and then other times they looked like a team that was, a Big 12 team that, like most of the Big 12 this year, where you can look great one night and the next night you can look like, man, I am worn out because that took all of our energy. So I'm not sure.
I got a feeling I'm not. The team you saw who they were this year will look a lot, not saying the players, but they'll look different with their personality and their, what's the word I'm looking for? Identity.
Yeah. That's like
I don't think he wants to play a lot better defense. Everybody does. Baylor does too. But I think you're going to see a little bit. Not that they didn't have grit, but something different about them next year.
Yeah, I do. And maybe that's just it. Maybe it's not even a personnel thing, because you look up and down the roster and I don't see many problems. I mean, obviously you can go out and get a stud scorer in the transfer portal or something like that. But, for the most part, I trust Grant McCaslin in the roster building. It's just what was missing that, why do you lose to an NC State? Yes, DJ Burns is pushing everybody around, obviously. But, why does that happen? Those are the things he's got to figure out, which I think he will. But I think that's the question, and it's unknown. I think there's an X factor that they're just not quite hitting on there.
Their big man was hurt a lot he missed a ton of games. Big influence inside, and that also contributed to some of the fade that they had.
Yeah. Number 2, Baylor. How quickly can their 5 stars contribute? The VJ Edgecombs of the world. How quickly can they?
Robert
Wright. They're going to have to get some contribution from them because you've got 4 starters likely leaving. I mean, Jalen Bridges and Ray J. Dennis for sure. Jalen Bridges can't really improve his stock anymore, and Ray J. Dennis is out of eligibility. And if the other 2 freshmen come back, that's a great problem to have. I mean, to have all these guys, it's a great problem to have, but that's not likely to happen. So in the world we live in, where we don't, live in clouds of marshmallows and candy canes, they're going to have a team that does not have a lot of veterans and not sure which of those veterans will be back and will be built largely out of the transfer portal to find their starters. And so they're going to need VJ Edgecombe and Wright to contribute right away. I mean, they're really going to have something happen.
Wright's a guy that can handle the ball.
Yeah.
I've seen video of Edgecombe, but Wright can handle the ball. They'll get another guard or 2 in the portal, like they are, like all the time.
Point guard in the portal is just a Scott Drew automatic.
But one of the things that it was said about what Butler and Teague and Davion Mitchell was those guys were not only transfers, but they had a year to marinate and grow up. And that just doesn't happen anymore because the transfer portal rules are different. So you don't have a time to kind of have them and then build and gain more experience and yet chemistry, I don't know if it could even happen enough anymore.
You also don't have guys who stay for 3-4 years going in the lottery of the NBA draft anymore.
Right, absolutely.
Like that's not. I've seen the arguments of like the one and dones failed and they've got to go back. Like there's a combination. It's go get veterans in the portal and have your star freshmen, and that's the combination. Yeah. But they didn't have much in the way of veterans because Langston Love gets hurt. And do they win that game with Langston Love? Very much a chance that they do.
They may win 3 or 4 of the games.
Exactly. So, how off was the roster really? The roster seems like it was probably fine, but a big piece got hurt, and all of a sudden that veteran leadership's not there, and I don't think that you can rely on freshmen to lead. I think that's the thing. Like, you want that talent, but you don't necessarily expect them to be, like, the ones leading the way, so to speak.
And people forget about the 21 team. I don't know if there's been a team in sports history that has gone through the season injury-free like that one did. The only injury they had was collectively they got COVID. That was it.
Yep.
I mean, they had
almost derailed the season, man.
But, nobody missed significant time for knees, ankles, anything. Everyone was, when they were playing Gonzaga that night, no one even was sore. Yeah. They were just ready to go.
Definitely not afterwards.
So rare.
The thing I'm worried about with Langston, and I think he brings a physicality too because he's a thick, physical player, is that he has a history, even if it's fluky stuff, like his eye, remember, got poked or whatever, and he can't stay healthy, and some of it's just bad luck. Hopefully he can stay and remain healthy because they need him. If they could keep Walter or Misi next year, either one would be winning the lottery, literally. They probably won't keep either one, but which of those 2 would you rather have?
I mean, I'd probably rather have Walter just based on how guard play is.
I thought Misi was about to pop near the last quarter of the season. Remember against Kansas, and then it just kind of.
I mean, Ashley said in his post today that there's, I guess, the biggest chance would be for Misi to come back because he didn't play well in the tournament. He might come back, but that would still a small.
But I think Misi, would he not be drafted ahead of Walter?
No, I think Walter's going to get picked ahead of him.
Well,
but I mean, probably not far enough to where it's going to matter.
Well, there's not that many lottery picks.
And he might be a lottery pick, but he might be top 20, and even then, you got to go.
Right.
Number 1, Kansas. What does the roster look like next season? Dwan Harris is back. Hunter Dickinson likely back. KJ Adams likely back. Furphy is in question, but I think he'll be back. So you've got 4 of those starters back. Now,
it all rides on Timberlake.
I think he's out of eligibility. By the way, We didn't talk about it, but I thought it was funny. After the game against Samford the other night, Nick Timberlake said, man, I couldn't believe how many fans Samford had. And then after he left, Bill Self's like, I'm going to have to tell him later those were Gonzaga fans. Yeah. Like they were hoping, now granted, it didn't matter who Gonzaga played. They could have played the 96 Bulls. If you're going to make 80% of your shots, you're not going to lose. But Kansas has, 4, maybe 5 guys for sure on the roster next year. But this roster is going to look very different. And I wouldn't be surprised, it wouldn't totally shock me if there was one of those guys I mentioned that out of nowhere wasn't there. I think Furphy's back, even though he's got some NBA buzz. He's got to get bigger and stronger and more durable for a year. But you want to talk about a team that is putting out the open for business sign. Yeah. It is Bill Self in Kansas, and he's healthy this year. He's healthy because I think it was a huge factor last year that right after the tournament, which is when you have to do kind of your wheeling and dealing on things, well, he couldn't do all the things he normally did. And to get Hunter Dickinson, that was incredible. But, the Arteria Morris.
Who had a more disappointing year, Kansas or Baylor?
I say Kansas.
I think Kansas because Dickinson. Because of Dickinson.
Well, and look, he was
they had
great
their point guard
all year. Yeah, they had but they didn't have the depth. And but I do it's one of those things we talked about with Alabama in football this year, and maybe it's gonna be different with Kalen DeBoer, but when they were struggling early on offense, this is before we all knew that Nick Saban was going to retire. You're like, well, enjoy this year where Alabama seems a little gettable, SEC, because they're not going to let it happen again, But enjoy this year, Big 12, that Kansas was gettable because somebody's lit a fire.
Hey, but Arizona coming in,
Colorado
that's the fire. Some heat coming in.
That's the fire, All right,
Paul, thank you very much.